Kamagala iramna. Det your hoods. Go get it. Alice Taff, you hut tuasak. Alice Hinudikia Ang. New Jersey, Dach Hoch Ti. Och Tach Yachat Yati. German Ayachat. Welsh Yadi Ayachat. Alice Taff's Ezre, New Jersey Nation. Deghatan Unangan Tlingit Yilch Kosinech Juno Sioj Siking Yilch Trathdo Sasalina Kasachta Koking. It's an honor for me to be here today to give a little bit of worldview on endangered languages and language retention. The reason to do this is so that everyone knows that this is not a situation that's limited to Southeast Alaska or North America, but languages worldwide are facing the same peril. I want to define what I mean by language. So a language is an understanding among a community of speakers that certain symbols or sounds or signs have certain meanings. A language is a community of understanding. I'm going to mention some endangered languages communities and the number of speakers that they have. These go fast. Arrow. This is northern Sammi in Finland have about 2,000 speakers. Torres Strait Creole in Australia has about 23,000 speakers. Guarani in Paraguay has about 5 million speakers. Zulu, South Africa, about 9 million speakers. Itza, Guatemala, 12 speakers. Macau, Washington State. There are some young speakers now. Unangamtunu, Alaska, has about 65 speakers. Ainu, Japan, maybe 15 speakers. Aheu, Thailand, 1,000 speakers. Bom in Sierra Leone, 250 speakers. Amyak, Afghanistan, about 500,000 speakers. Buryat, Mongolia, 64,000 speakers. So you can see how it's going. Catawba, South Carolina, 0 fluent speakers is what I have written here. And when we think of speakers, one way to think of speakers is the speakers who form an unbroken chain since the beginning of and continuation of the language. Then for some languages, we have a new chain starting, or a very thin new chain starting connected to the old one. This map, every single little dot on this map, it represents a language that is endangered. There are about 6,000 languages in the world, and most of them are endangered. Endangered meaning that maybe there will soon be no more speakers. Here's a little graphic that shows a distribution of the world's languages. You see the circle, the blue circle. If the circle is 100% of the world's languages, the large guy in red on the left, and I won't talk about why red and blue, but the large guy in red is 96% of the world's population. And 96% of the world's population holds 4% of the world's languages. That leaves the little bitty guy in blue, 4% of the world's population, responsible for holding 96% of the world's languages. So it's a big burden or a big responsibility. And this is one of the reasons why this language shift is happening. In North America, there are maybe something like 187 languages right now. 80% of them are moribund. Moribund meaning that children are not learning the languages at their parents' knees. Africa has about 1,200 indigenous languages. Almost none of them are taught in the schools. Australia, 90% of the languages are moribund. Why? The reasons that you know are largely, that affect this area are largely the same reasons worldwide. Colonization, the large populations of people in the large languages are overpowering the smaller populations, and the real behavior, the activity ranges from murder, wiping out a whole people, physical abuse, economic deprivation of land or the resources on the land, education, splitting families up. It's happened all over the world. So it sounds very grim. It is very grim. But even in the face of this, there are wonderful things happening all over the planet where language populations are saying, not in this community, we're going to turn this around. So that's what we're going to be looking at now. And I would like you to go away from this talk with the concept of civil right. It's your civil right in this country to be able to use your own language. Here's a picture of White Earth Elder Guatamala Joe Auginaush, Ojibwe, and I was reading this book, Living Our Language, and Joe says, we're not losing our language. Our language is losing us. Anton Truer is the editor of this book of stories, and he goes on to say, the grammar, syntax, and structure of the language are complete. The oral tradition and history are still with us. The current peril faced by the Ojibwe language is a matter of a declining number of speakers and a people who have lost their way, rather than a language that is lost or dying. Some of the terminology being used now in this field of language restoration is the languages are falling asleep, the languages are waking up. This morning I was thinking about the tide of colonization that some people have used as an image of washing over the culture. This tide that is not within our power. But the tide goes out. It does go out. It comes in and it covers up the food on the beach, but it always goes out again. And the resources there are exposed. So maybe it's time for the tide to ebb. So what's happening with the tide to ebb? There's attention being paid from within the communities and outside the communities about language. So I've invited some friends from St. Paul Island. If you can, we're not there yet. Here's some of the terms that are being used in the field. We have language retention. We're building these retaining walls to hold the language. Restoration, restoring something that's tattered. Revitalization, waking it up. Preservation, pickling it somewhere for further use. Documentation, collecting it, putting it somewhere in a document. The purpose of all of it is for perpetuation, so that the languages will go on into the future. So now we go to St. Paul Island, and people are speaking their language more with each other. In a lot of places, people who can talk their language are talking English to each other when they meet on the street, when they do anything. And they're talking language to their kids too.
Christos воскрес!
Воистину воскрес!
Yeah, Christos воскрес!
Воскрес! А така спочатку чутитко.
Yeah.
Камуда.
Oh, okay.
Камагала.
Хамагамна.
Ja, камагала чехталант.
Ille machtelak. Amun rolegichida.
Ja, ist kun воскрес. Амалакок, is kanako. Kogo lakata. Legal das kleen guld. Amma ramda da kriku se gwachte kleen. Gedi gwatka rechte kort.
Keen mamachteting. Keen mamachteting. Mamngetchen. Ayekchi sadako. Taatngetchen na tayokchi sadako. Ashkong waganaki. Ahang waganaki.
And there's worldwide attention being paid to language restoration, language retention. Most of it's a lot of talk and hand-wringing, but there are resources for funding. And I've listed a few of them here. Administration for Native Americans, Esther Martinez bill passed in December that should provide money for immersion language programs, federal. National Science Foundation has documenting endangered languages money. University of Alaska Southeast has just received some of this for work with the Tlingit and English. International Polar Year, which is going on for 2 years, has funds for language work. The Lannan Foundation addresses language preservation. Volkswagen has a big pot of money for endangered language documentation and preservation. The Endangered Languages documentation program at the University of London gives out large grants for language documentation and archiving and for materials that can then be used in the communities. First Nations Development Institute in Canada has money for villages even out here. National Geographic has a new language documentation program. And there are many others. Let's see. I just wanted to show you, let's skip this. Here's Daganag people. We just have up on the web a new audio dictionary with 3,000 sentences recorded by two people. You can search any word you want and come up with all the entries that have to do with that word in either language and click and hear the people, the fluent speakers talking. And most of the fluent speakers who are recorded there are no longer with us. The National Science Foundation grant that we have just received from for UAS will allow us to make recordings of people having conversations in Tlingit, everyday talk. Pass the salt. One of the young Unangan Aleut women was learning her language, and she's remembered, my father used to say, Kalagan, all the time, and I couldn't remember what it meant. And so we were all meeting together, and she asked one of the elders, what does Kalagan mean? And they said, it means, get out of the way. And we will also be able to catalog Nora Downhauer's collection of 40 years of Tlingit audio, digitize it, and take care of it. So with that, it's come to my attention that not everybody here wants to listen to another white lady school teacher tell you what to do with your language. So I'm going to turn over the rest of the program to some of the world's leading experts on language retention in Southeast Alaska. We have a large panel here today. You notice that I took all the time I wanted because I went first. And I know that if I introduce them, I could see this morning they'll have to introduce themselves anyway. So I'm just going to ask you each one to come as it's your turn. Gunwadi.
Gunilchish Gunimchi ay khatu asok Jade ye khatna u hesh takadat khosiku Jan okay in I grew up with the language. I would like to do something here. Ach klawe an sechtie duasag. Ganach tedi ayachat katsu ishkitan. Awe ach lish ach kla dukak. Weha awe ye duasagun. Katsu anya lahash ye duasagun. Awe yichatin nistat. Katsu ya tsutat, ye at yag hajiyas. We saw it, gunalchish kunach. Ach ish has to Changukedi. Yewe ach tundatani yeyiti ach twasigu oya yaha at uutsu we nas shaki atsu yag yin yeyiti jadeye hatna u leitlayech achakai yewe ach tundatani yeyiti ach twasigu tsu ach lich yag yin yeyiti katsu we aji ai ganachtedi katsu ishkitan gunilchish. My Tlingit name is Guatamala. My name is Marcia Hotch, and I work for the Chilkat Indian Village. I work as the language program, and I just want to share a little bit with you on what we're doing in Klukwan. We have a program where we started up this year. We got funds from Department of Education. I sound so official now. And for 3 years for doing the language within the school. And so with that, we also started a Master Apprentice program. And we have utilized Leanne Hinton's book for those of you that wish to start programs. This is a wonderful book. It's called How to Keep Your Language Alive. There's a lot of suggestions in it on things to do to work with a master speaker. These are some of our elders in Klukwan. The ones you can see there is Agnes Bellinger. Her mother is from Klukwan, Jenney Thlanauht. And she came and worked with us in 2004, November of 2004, and got the elders kind of started in gathering, getting together, talking about the things that they want to pass on to the next generations. Through this workshop, we had done what the gentleman did with a slideshow in telling about how the hits ati and how they're supposed to take care of the at'u. And we documented this session. And also something that we didn't plan, you never know what's going to happen when you gather your elders together, because they're the ones with the knowledge. And if you don't give them an environment to share that, it'll forever be locked away with them. But here, this encouraged them to share with each other. And over, we would say, this is for our grandchildren. This is why we're here today, knowing that some of them won't be with us. And in fact, 2 of them aren't with us anymore. The first one there on your left would be Agnes Bellinger. I forgot her Tlingit name, and Evelyn Hodge, Kachkwe, Kadai Katlat. She is no longer with us. And her brother, Smith Katsik, I work very closely with Evelyn and Smith, and Smith's grandson there. And in this workshop, we also, towards the end of our time together, began to realize, oh my goodness, names, we're forgetting names. What is the names? And we were concerned about some of our younger people getting these names, but they weren't pronouncing them correctly. And so during this time, we recorded over 200 Tlingit names on Kagwantan, Shangukedi, and Ganachtedi, and some of the Lukachadi, some names that they knew. So, whoops. Joe Hotch Gochdakashu is one of he is our leader, and sometimes, a lot of times, Helkeden Wutusiku Chadasa Huue Chakluk we always ask him. And in our Master Apprentice program that we just started this year, we have 4 of the elders that work very closely with, we've got a team of about 6 apprentices, 3 that are on the program, and then others that are just coming on their own. And this is Katrina Hotch. And she has been taking language for about 4 years now, and has found that doing this Master Apprentice program where they're one-on-one with the master, they spend time with them, and they get on the phone, and they're just there together. They're not in a classroom, whereas I teach in a classroom situation from the kindergarten up to, we teach it in the school. Some of these people that are apprentices have been with the program for a while, who are now going into the classrooms and taking over some of those classrooms, so I don't have to keep cutting myself thin.
When I want to use something, and even if it just doesn't come to me right away, like Evelyn said, kahi, I wanted me to tell her what it was, and I looked up. I know it. I was looking at the ceiling, and she just told me, so my body knew what it was, but I didn't realize hit my head that I really did.
Katrina's Tlingit name is Akla, and she's one of the descendants of one of those 5 brides that went up to the Chilkat area. So, and the language is also going on in conjunction with UAS under our SEDS program also, and we'd also do a class at university level, which we have approximately about 12 students. And it's very exciting to see their enthusiasm. And when you look at the ratio of our community, 12, and our population is about, 80, 90? I think that's pretty good. And then we have, Evelyn does a class in Haines, and then we had our first get-together with all the some of the students in the elementary school, the Klukwan school, and this is our first time getting together where everybody, our students at the school, the people in the community in Haines, and the UAS students and community members. And I tell you, after 6 years ago when we started down this road, and being in that room with these people who have decided to step up, we see a problem and they want to work at the solution, and that is learning the language. Hasta twa siku, hasta yuk atangi has on siku. And it was so neat to have all of these, and even the younger students were helping the adult learners how to pronounce things during this time. It was exciting. It was an honor to be in that room with that many people. Yewe hagunaf chish ach e isa achi.
Gachtain.
Gulchish Khatkakai Ach Ishas Chukanedi Akhatas Chukansha Akhanian Kakwantan Akhanian Tekwede An yat kusani. Sheet kakwan yat yakine. Lakwaya ke exasity. Yak hati ate. Hak etis ache. Chetachwasa yish kakatulanik. Achia yak hatu tua at. I do believe that maybe I should translate a little bit. My Tlingit name is Kachtlain. I'm a Raven, Sockeye clan. I am born from the Alsek River. Our clan house is Shaket, or the Raven House. I'm the child of the Chilkat people, the Bear people. My aunties are the Chilkat ladies. I am the grandson of the Thunderbird people, Chilkat, the Shankuketi, and they have the Thunderbird house. My grandfather is Cochain, Frank Italiu, and he comes from the Italiu River, Aqua. My grandfather's father is Tribe George, Kawasa, Hutu Sak, Lukakati. He's a Raven, Sockeye clan, and that's why I am also a Raven Sockeye. We are told to keep everything short so we get everything in. I think it's a pretty good idea on paper. But when we start dealing with our culture, when we start to cut things off to make it faster, we are starting to lose our Tlingit way. We no longer do the things that we're supposed to because it was out of respect that our ancestors done things the way that they did. It wasn't because bingo was going to start pretty soon. They done things because they respected each other. And they always talked that way. If we start to keep cutting our Tlingit ways, diluting it to a point where it's no longer Tlingit, then somebody will come around and write about the Tlingit people. They will write what they feel they should write. No longer is it Tlingit. It's somebody else's idea of what we are and how we do things. So that's why one of the things that our ancestors said, when you come to a place like this, when hardly anybody knows you, you should introduce yourself the traditional way. So they don't only know you by your English name, but my Tlingit name, my clan, my father's clan, the house, my grandfather, where they come from. They understand you a little bit more. And this also does two things. The person who is introducing himself gains confidence in himself when you start to introduce yourself that way. You understand who you are. When you know who you are, then you can speak about what you want to talk about. And this is why we do the things we do. Our ancestors, I say, are very smart people. The things that they did, the things that they said, the things that they said to us, that passed down. There was a time when the Tlingit people were no longer interested in their culture, the language, singing, dancing, the carving, how to make regalia, all these things. Nobody had any interest in it. Now this is where I talk about getting our clan leaders together. This is how they solved our problems, by getting people together. the clan leaders. They get together and they talk about it. And they come up with a solution. Now those people a long time ago, our ancestors, came together here in Sitka. These were all the big shots. They talked about how do we get the interest back to our people of who they are. Pretty soon they will not be Tlingits anymore. And of course they were right. They said, okay, we'll get them together in a dance. They'll have fun. And while they're having fun, we'll sneak in something so they can learn something by it. So that's why celebration was born. And that's when one of the leaders made a speech. So hey te shikachtutan yaya kuskedakit. We will now open this box of knowledge that's been left in our care. They opened the box. That box is still full. Not too much has been taken out of it. There's lots of knowledge in this box. We have to start using it. Taking things out of this box that we can use. That's why I'm so glad to see so many people here. So many people interested in what we're doing. How can we preserve the things that we do? There's things, I believe. Oh, wait a minute. I'm getting away from what I'm supposed to be talking about. It's very, very easy to do as a Tlingit person. I'm supposed to be talking about how we are teaching our people about language. We have lots of places, pockets all over the place, even families getting together and working with each other, talking to each other, which is good, very good. We do that in different villages. We do it in different ways. Now, I know here in Sitka, we started what we call a teleconference, video conference. And we moved it to Juneau. Now we have video conference from Juneau, Angoon, Sitka, Klukwan, and sometimes Haines. This is where we bring in our elders. We bring in our teachers, and we get them in one room, and everybody can see them. I talk about the difference in our language. It's not the difference, the variation in our language, where a person in Yakutat, when they speak just a little bit different from the person in Klukwan. They can understand each other. There's no problem with it. There's just a little bit of difference. So it's like saying the Kennedys spoke a little bit different. So maybe we shouldn't talk like that. Well, I guess we shouldn't, because that's the way they talk. Now, when we talk like this to our people, the variation, if you're from Klukwan, and this is the way you learned how to speak, because this is the way your ancestors spoke, don't let anybody else take it away from you. This is your language. This is the way they talked. When somebody comes along and tries to take it away from you, make you talk different, the way they want you to talk. It's no longer your language from your village, your ancestors. It has been taken away from you. The Yupik country, the people up there talk their own language at home, in school, and for 2 hours, they get to speak English in school. And by golly, I talked to the elders there. I told them, never give that up, never give your language up. And we lost ours. We gave it up. Our ancestors, our elders, they knew this was going to happen. It's when they sold Alaska, they said they will come at us like a tidal wave. We will not be able to stop them. So we have to send our children to their schools so they can speak on our behalf. But there will be families among us who will continue doing the things that we do now. So sometime in the future, they will be teaching that to our own people. And that's where we're at right now. We have people now which are teaching our own people how to speak their own language. We have people who are learning. They see the value of our language, the value of the things that we do, such as Alice. Now, Alice is not a Tlingit, but she's studying. She's studying language. She's learning how to speak it. And she's working with us, helping us. We need people like that. We need people that can help us. And I'm glad that there are people like that that can help us. We have young people in grade school. They don't have any trouble learning our language. They learn quickly. They run home to show off what they have learned in school. They get into the house to speak to their parents. Parents don't understand what their kids are talking about. So the kids lose interest. And then they stop talking altogether. We don't want that to continue happening. We have to somehow reach the parents. We've already reached the young people, our grandchildren. We've already reached them. We understand how they learn so quickly. But how do we reach the parents? How do we reach the parents to get their interest, to start learning these things that belong to our Tlingit people, to belong to the Haida people, to the Tsimshians, to all the different nations in Alaska? How do we get those interests of those people so we can start using it like our ancestors used it? So that's why I'm so glad to see so many people here. I've met quite a few people, and some so far away as, let's see, where the heck was the last person? Oh, Boston. You heard about the Boston Tea Party? Where they dressed up like Indians and poured tea in the bay? Well, last night I met a Chinese lady who's from Boston from the museum. And she dressed up like white man, come up here to Alaska to learn about us. I would like to listen to those people that have been studying our people for years. See what it is that we're doing. How are we doing things? We ask for help. Right now, I'm asking you for help. We have people that are teaching, doing things every day, their time, without getting paid for it. For years. Some of this money that's being given to our people for language is not reaching those people. They are reaching people that they hire, not the people that's already teaching. We have a program now. We haven't got it started yet. We have the search program has been helping us for a long time. They're the ones that sponsor a video conference. They're the ones that put up the money. They put up the place. They put up the camera. They do all those things for us. They don't charge us nothing for it. Now they came up with a new thing. They said, okay, the language classes are always having trouble getting the native food. So we're going to get money and buy native food for the class, which is good. But we carried one step further. And instead of buying the food, why don't we get some gas for a boat? Get a couple of young men and an uncle. Take them out there. Get a seal. Take it back to the town, to the village. Get some young ladies. Cut it up. Get the skin. Stretch it out. Learn how to make moccasins. All this from that one gas money. It can be done. Search is now trying to see if they can do it, if they can use that money for that purpose. Now we have a lot of native corporations here. I know Sitka is very helpful when it comes to our culture. On their things to do for their people, on the top of their list is culture. You say it's on top of education. Culture itself is education. To them, that's the most important part, most important thing. We have other native corporations who help us out. We need all the help. We thank them. We thank all the people that are helping us, the individuals who come and help us, like Alice, who helped. I want to point out one other person here that's very good. I'm very proud of this person. This young lady over here. You. Get done. I want to introduce. This young lady grew up in our cultural camp in Haines. We run a cultural camp. When she started, she was very young, very small. She wanted to play dolls, you know. And that's okay. You know, she grew up there. And she done very well in that camp. So now she's let's see, are you out of college now? Almost out of college. So this is what we're doing with the people that's coming out of our camp. The people that were once, when they're as students, are now running the camp. They learned how to run the camp. So their children in the future will also learn how to run the camp. We talked about this language. If we could hire some people that can continue talking their own way, we used to do this at our cultural camp. We used to bring in the ladies from Huna and sit around. They used to tell jokes to each other all the time, all day long. And they listened to them. And why can't we do that with our children? If we hired some people to sit around and tell jokes to each other, talk about different things, stories, and the little kids grow up running around, getting underfoot sometimes, but they listen to it. They listen to it, and they'll start talking. They'll start dancing. They'll start doing all these different things. You don't have to push them. You don't have to tell them to go out there and dance. They'll go out there when they want to. And that's what we want to see. And that's what the way it happened with this young lady here. So I'm very proud of her. What else is I going to say? Is that it? Uchawa. Cheese.
Donald Cheese. Bachlein. Say good.
Shiao Denegri, Anyat Usani, Achlich Guhas, Gunil Chish Hatiadi, Ye Hook Yechat Yeti, Stuga Hadeti, Char de Yechat Kainai U, at Gade Achwa Kai, Chiyesu Ach Ik, Dultuha, Klinket Ena Yukatank. Tlingit and English Sego Yuchat do a sock. Gleit ka kleinach, Jessica Chester yuchat du a sock. Yech na chatsiti, Kluk nach sha ayachat ka giak kwan chatsiti tsu. Ach ish has nawe jan. Ach ish du in tut ua at we shangu kedi koa. Gunil chish shangu kedi. Gunil chish kingisti ka gunil chish guch kla. Ach at has ka ach chilko has. Yahana kahidi dagina hit you do a sock. Ha at aya kluk ka gle yachyati we hitch ka kunagu a yech city. Ach klilko has luka hadi. Ach klilko has shangu kedi. Gunil chish. Ach klilko has nawe jan. Ach ish yina nach nawe jan yadi city. Let me see if I can remember everything I said. My Tlingit name is Sikot. My English name is Jessica Chester. I am of the Raven Moiety. I am a woman of the Koho people, the Kluknachadi. I am also a Lutik. My mother's mother was a Lutik. My father is Norwegian. I am the grandchild of the Norwegian along his lineage. However, he was taken in by the Shangu Kedi. And I just want to say Gunilchi Shangu Kedi. I'll be presenting on the psychological implications of Tlingit language loss. This is a combination of research that I have done while attending the University of Alaska Southeastern Juneau for the past 4 years. I was really, I guess I could say blessed, but really happy also because while I attended there, I was studying the social sciences. That's what I got my degree in. And because of that, I was able to focus most of my research on language revitalization, why people don't speak Tlingit anymore, you know, and I know many of us, if you think of our families, all the issues and problems we have because of the loss of identity, and that's what I'll be speaking about today. I'm here representing the Juneau School District. I work there. I work at the high school. I teach one Tlingit language class and then also one at Zuntikahini Middle School. And I also work for Sea Alaska Heritage part-time. Language creates identity. Languages are symbols that represent a culture's worldview. Through language, we are able to transmit our culture and tradition from generation to generation. Linguist Michael Krauss put it very beautifully, I think, when he said, languages are more than just practical systems of communication. Each is also a creation of beauty through the collective and creative spirit of countless generations of our ancestors with spiritual and emotional values unique to the identity of each society. Forming identity through language development. Prior to Euro-American contact, learning one's identity began while still in the womb. Parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles spoke to their unborn baby, many times already calling the child by his or her Tlingit name. I am very grateful for Kingis T, who instructed me on the Tlingit phrases to say to shak, yadu a shak, du yahaya achsiaya. This is my daughter. Her Tlingit name is Shak. Her other Tlingit name is Kunuk. And when I was pregnant, Kingis T was like, you need to talk to your baby. And I was like, okay. And so with his encouragement and also with Kakishat, Florence Marks Shakely, who's my primary Tlingit teacher out of the university, and Kechne, Nora Marks Downhauer, I learned some phrases, and the one that really stuck that I still tell Shak every day, Tlingit awewa e kaya kudzike. You are Tlingit, you are a human being, you are an intelligent being. And this is how children were instructed at birth. And losing that language has really changed how our children are raised. Linguistic relativism. Sapphire Whorf's theory of linguistic relativism states that the language an individual speaks determines their worldview. Communication scholars Lustig and Koster discuss that languages shape how we experience and interpret the world in which we live in. Thus, language is an avenue for a culture's worldview. It is how one's culture is exemplified. This was greatly changed during assimilation. The assimilation assumption is the idea that all cultures will merge into the powerful dominant culture and that they would adapt the ideas and beliefs of the dominant culture as their own. This was primarily accomplished through boarding schools and conversion to Christianity, and later with the establishment of the Alaska Native Brotherhood, which helped assimilate the Tlingit into the dominant culture. I just want to mention that it was done, the ANB-ANS, it was founded to help us to be able to integrate both worlds. However, this created dissonance not just within the school districts, within the education systems. It created dissonance because the dominant culture was taking over. The ideas of S. Hall Young and Sheldon Jackson created the educational system in which our grandparents were subjected to. The idea was to replace the Tlingit ideology with American ideology. To do this, they implemented an English language-only policy. Thus, Native children who went to school were severely punished for speaking their language. This created dissonance within the Tlingit society. Linguistic insecurity. Losing the ability to communicate in the heritage language created social and psychological issues for the Tlingit Nation regarding their competence and identity. Downhauer and Downhauer discussed linguistic insecurity, stating, "Irreparable damage has been done to the mental health of Native communities, and many individuals are insecure about who they are because their identity, language, and culture were taken away from them. This irreparable damage will continue to perpetuate from generation to generation unless, as a society, we can begin to repair and heal this damage." And I think the speakers before me did a great job of talking about how we are repairing it. Cultural insecurity. Scholars Germain and Bloom state that grim statistics on health, education, and work and welfare often place American Indians and Alaska Natives at the lowest levels nationwide. Not only have our statistics become grim, but also our ability to cope with everyday life. The dissonance that our ancestors experienced and felt while trying to live in two worlds continues to affect all Tlingit families today. One personal example for me within my family is just growing up, and we didn't really have an identity. Growing up, we only knew a few Tlingit words like chuk and ishan, and my mom told us once that her mom, when she would bathe her, would scrub her, saying, "Why won't the dark come out?" And so that has affected our family. And so I'm grateful for my teachers who are helping me be able to cope with this and heal. And as a group of educators here and as community members, I think we're doing a really good job in going in the right direction. This cultural insecurity has created what Dr. Rosita World called psychological impoverishment that has been transmitted through the generations. She stated in her anthropology class that I took in spring 2004 that Tlingits once were able to express themselves through oratory. They would heal emotionally through beautiful metaphors. Once their language was taken away, they could not express themselves as they were accustomed to, and this was perpetuated to their children. Language is central to identity. The Tlingit language is central to the identity of the Tlingit. Language serves as a way to interpret the world in which we live. If we lose the ability to communicate in our heritage language, we will lose part of our identity. The revitalization of the Tlingit language. Through revitalization efforts, the Tlingit people are adapting a new identity through remembering their ancestors' culture and learning the heritage language that was once forbidden to speak. By implementing traditions of their ancestors into mainstream America, Tlingit people will be able to heal the wounds of enculturation and assimilation. Learning Tlingit language and culture. Teaching Tlingit in public schools fosters all students' development and awareness of their culture, identity, and a place in the world. And here is my high school class that I teach at JDHS, and they're a great bunch of kids, and they all know their introductions, and right now they're working on lengthening it and being able to recognize their opposites. They're awesome. They make me feel like I can do it. So, speak Tlingit every day. In order to keep the language alive, we must speak it every day. When a language is so disembodied and unadapted to new situations that it cannot handle its sports or changing diapers, it is not far from death. That's from Downhauer and Downhauer. And I just want to say in conclusion, Gunas Chish to all my teachers who continually teach me to change diapers in Tlingit. And this is the way to do this, to speak Tlingit every day, is not only learning phrases in school for the children, but it's also speaking it in the homes. And so I think Paul hit on a very big topic that we need to get the parents more involved and get them excited about speaking it and communicating with their children in Tlingit. So, Gunas Chish.
Gunas Chish, say good. Dalstini.
Okay, everybody's got to stand up and stretch a little bit. Come on now. Gaidanak. Yechayati. 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 Oh. We will. We're going to do that. We will. Okay. Kaikida. So I'm going to kind of bounce off Seklut's presentation as well as Gachlein and talk about the path that some of us have taken in terms of Tlingit language and cultural survival. I want all of you, first of all, to know that I am not a fluent speaker. I am a learner of the language, and I will be a learner until the day that I die. I give credit to my successes to my mentors, my friends, my family, and above all to my teachers. Gunas Chish. Chayesu achin has altu. They're still teaching me. Yekwe nakitlan? Ayekwe. Ach ish has kluknach adi. Ach ad has kluknach sha. Ach lilko has ganach tedi. Ka ganach sha. Gunas Chish. Yek ewe ade ay de khunye. Yek yuch sitini at yekhini. Yaegi. Anyad kusani. Shao deneki. Dal jinniyu ayachatu asak. Kleed kach einach. Mary Fuledi yuchatu asak. Yanwasha ayachat. Kluknach adiadi chatsiti. Lillian Hammond do intut ua at wit luknach adi ach ish. Yakdat kwan. Gunas Chish luknach adi. Ach klak a. Shak sani kikyu do asak. Klak an kwan. Ach kla ish ganach tedi ka southern Tishoni khu siti. Achowe ganach tedi ka southern Tishoni Dutch khanayachat. Sheet ka kwan ka klak an kwan ayachat su. I say this because there's a story of 5 grandmothers, 5 cousins, all Kagwantan women who came from Sitka. And in the 1800s, they moved up into the Klukwan area. Kuneoti was referring to this earlier. So they moved up to Klukwan, and they married into the ravens up there in Klukwan. And that's why I say that I am from Sitka and from Klukwan, because my ancestors come from here. There were 5 families born from those 5 cousins in Klukwan. They include the Strong family, the Lindoff family, Jenney Thlanauht's family, and my own. Guchitachayachat I too want to say a big thank you to the hosts for having us here in Sitka. It's really good to be here and to be with. It's like coming home again. I went to high school here too, so I have a lot of memories and life connections here. So, Gach Klein referred to the Klukwan cultural camp, and he said I was a child that was always underfoot at this camp. Well, this camp was the beginning of my path. It was the beginning of my path to where I am now. There's a picture of us all before we were about to climb Qaysan Mountain, the biggest mountain there is to climb in Haines. Austin Hammond Donawak was the founder. He's Tluka Khadi from the Raven House, Yehit from Deshu. He was the steward of the Atu and the Hitsati, and we all claimed him as our grandfather. So at the beginning of my path, I had started attending this camp when I was about 8 years old, and I attended it for at least 2 weeks every summer until I was 16. And at this camp, I learned the ways of my ancestors. I learned survival skills, gathering and preparing traditional foods, history and oral narratives, singing and dancing, basic sounds and basic words in the Tlingit language. One example, I have to give an example of the survival skills. Once every session, we were given 3 matches, and on a dewy morning at 7 a.m., we were told to go outside with 3 eggs, a thing of dough, and these 3 matches and start a fire. If we couldn't get the fire started, we didn't get breakfast. So I'm really thankful for that. I can start a fire like that now. I want to give credit to my very first teacher, Pauline Phillips, who is a Kagwantan from Haines. She came to camp regularly and gave us language lessons. Basically, this is where I acquired the sounds and some of the basic nouns. One technique that I really learned and have passed on to my peers and my students is just how to learn the vowels. They're short and long vowels, and they go e, I, U. So what I do with my students now is I tell them to say them with me, so you guys can try it. E, I, U. And then, it gets really fun. When you're teaching junior high students, you got to keep them entertained, so we try to speed up the process and make a pretty good game out of it. So I want to say Gunachish to Paulina, who is not here today. She's in Haines. Here's just some pictures of some of our activities. This is us at the top of Qaysan. You can see the Chilkat River there in the back, and you can actually see the camp from the top of the mountain. And when you're on top of this mountain, not only can you see the mouth, the inlet, and the Chilkat River, but you can also see the mouth of the Chilkat River and pretty far up both rivers. So here's us dancing to the Jaywaika song. That girl, I'm in the front, and the girl next to me is Aleut, and that's why we were able to sing this song and dance it. Drinking soda pop was a rare occasion. I don't know, can you see there in that red t-shirt? There's Gach Klein when he was a young boy. He was one of our teachers too. I want to go on to talk about my high school years. I went to Mt Edgecumbe High School. Believe it or not, the Tlingit people were the minority there. So one example that always comes back to me is just walking down the hallways of the dorms, all girls dorms, and I heard girls talking on the phones in different languages, talking back home, Yupik, Inupiaq, Athabaskan, but never once did I hear Tlingit being spoken in the hallways. And so that was one really big inspiration for me. And then I had a teacher who I want to give credit to. I don't know if you're from Sitka, maybe you knew of Ray Stein. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a Japanese teacher at Mt Edgecumbe High School. And he always told our classes that we could go home and do with the language what he has done with the Japanese and Chinese languages at our school. And actually, people think that TPR was, it was a newly introduced thing to us, but he did TPR when I was in high school in the late 90s, so TPR wasn't really a new thing to me. Anyways, there was a couple words that I knew. Kink was one of them. in high school, and Gunachish. And there was one boy in particular, Bubba Hotch, who's from Klukwan, and we were at this school together with barely any other Tlingits around us. And so I don't know if this is appropriate, and I hope that you can forgive me if it's insulting, but every time we would walk by each other, we would call each other Gink, because it was the only connection that we had to each other. So I just have to say that learning my language in high school wasn't really a priority for me, but that all changed. That all changed when I started attending the University of Alaska Southeast. PETA's scholarship, Preparing Indigenous Teachers for Alaska's Schools, was a scholarship that I don't even remember applying for, honestly. About a month before I was supposed to be driving to Colorado for my first year at a university, I got a phone call that said, hey, you got this scholarship, why don't you come down to Juneau? So I am now a Juneau resident of almost 7 years, yikes. And then I'm signing up for classes, and what do I see on the list but Tlingit language, right? So I'm like, oh God, that'll be an easy class, it'll be fun, no big deal. But, then I caught on really fast, and then things started being asked of us who were catching on really fast, and, pretty soon I was on this path along with a few others, and here we are today. But this path that I found with this small group, we became a cohesive group. I mean, we school together, we play together, we learn together, and now we teach together. And this comes back to what everybody was talking about at the welcoming ceremony last night about this togetherness and how important it is to get by and to survive. So before I go on, I want you all to understand that I understand that this is not honorable to get up as a Tlingit person and talk and boast about oneself, okay? But my goal is not to boast about myself or to be too prideful. My goal is to inform you and to encourage you and to encourage others of all generations that we can strive to keep our language and culture alive. Going on to talk about the Klusti Institutes is really where I started to thrive. These were sponsored by the University of Alaska Southeast and Sea Alaska Heritage Institute. So I attended my first one in 2002, and we learned games and children's songs. We created networks with people of all ages from places reaching from, the lowest point of Southeast all the way up into the interior. And we held our first immersion camp out at Echo Ranch. For those of you who came to that first immersion camp, Kindei Jin. Yeah, fun one, wasn't it? Yeah. So these Echo camps, or these camps were just the beginning, right? We have Yunchika is what we called it. The elders and the young people traveled out. Okay, I have to explain this a little bit. We pulled up by boat to Echo Ranch Bible Camp. And then we trekked by foot, along beaches, through the woods. Some of the elders got on a tractor and, got pulled for a while. And then we had to get pulled across this river on a little trolley. I mean, can you imagine all of us piling on these little trolleys and getting pulled across the river? So, it was tough travel, and it was only a 5-day camp, but at this camp we had to build it ourselves. We had to build our own outdoor shelter, our own smokehouse. We built our own chai, which is a sweat lodge. We had some rough times out there. There was one morning when I woke up and my tent was upside down. It had rolled about 10 feet because I didn't stake it in, and our entire camp was flooded. But but the laughing prevailed, and the humor, and my main memory with that camp is the laughter, hearing the laughter of our elders out there. It was really great. So 2003, 2004, 2005, we all attended more workshops. For those of you who have been in the Klusti Institutes, please raise your hands so I can acknowledge you. Klusti Institute people, all these people are people that I've grown with through the years. So we acquired language and skills for teaching the language. We learned methods such as TPR, which is a total physical response. I mentioned it earlier. We created games and songs to teach children of all ages and acquired new knowledge every day. So here's just a list of songs. Do we have any little children in here? Kindergarten, junior high? Oh yeah, you, okay. Just say, I'll call you up in a second. We translated the Hokey Pokey. We created a song, well, Juan Klein back there created a game, Virginia, Kinde Ijin. She created a game, Kinde, yeah. We created a game, it's kind of like a version of musical chairs. Capture the flag for numbers, Simon Says, Simon card games such as Snurts, Cribbage, Go Fish, and many more, and TPR. So that became one of the silliest games of all. And I would like to get a couple people up here. Who wants to try to do the hokey pokey? Hachia? I'm going to have Jessica Seklud help me do the hokey pokey real quick. And you know what? When the last time I checked the schedule, I was on for 30 minutes, and I was not informed that we had more people, so I hope I'm not going too long. Okay, we can do it right here. Okay, so this usually would, do you need me to stop? Oh. This would usually start with a couple lessons of TPR to teach the body parts and whatnot, but we're going to just go right into it. You guys can come over here, and we just stand in a line. We don't necessarily need to be in a circle. You guys want to face the audience? There you go. All right. Okay, so the first one we're going to do is we're going to do our jin. Anybody know what your jin is? Jin. Jin ayah? Jin, okay? So, hey, this is what I mean by cohesive support group. You guys. Okay. Daki hletsu yijin, kuhi hletsu yijin, daki hletsu yijin, yitlechwa yijin, Tlingit yach anaitlech yu ayach yinak, yenakati. Whee! Okay, we'll do one more. Okay, this one's a fun one. I hope nobody gets offended. Ike, ayah, ike, okay? So you always have to make it fun, continuously fun for the children, because they'll lose interest really quick. Okay, daki hletsu iki, kuhi hletsu iki, daki hletsu iki, yitlechwa iki, Tlingit yach anaitlech yu ayachinak, yenakati. Hui! Gulchish.
The reason why that we came up here as adults is basically because our children need to see that we're not afraid and we're not humiliated by getting up here and doing what they would do. And that's really the wisdom and the knowledge of our Tlingit people. And so thank you for letting us come up and try to do what you are doing.
So I'll just kind of run through this quick, I guess, but we had camps that were held in various towns in Southeast Alaska, but we didn't only learn language. We learned protocol, gathering and preparing foods, art, and other aspects of our culture from the respected elders who were teaching us. We learned the importance of balance. And again, I can't reiterate enough the importance of the family ideals that came through from all these camps and institutes. You know, thick and thin, a lot of us have been through some trying times, and it's just really important. The togetherness has held us. Thank you, Ms. Chief. So I guess I just have some pictures showing how fun it can be to learn language. This is a TPR activity. That's Bessie Cooley and Alice from Hoona. Bessie Cooley is from the interior, so we had to learn how to integrate the M's as our W's. Go ahead. So art projects, we got Humpty over there and Dastea. We call her Humpty because her and her cousin, June Pagis, they sang Humpty Dumpty for us in English and then Tlingit, and it was just the best show ever. Okay, and we have weaving projects. I believe this was Ashket is back here somewhere. There she is. That's her hat she was working on. Here we're gathering gumboots, so this is just an example. You know, we're out on the beaches in Glacier Bay gathering gumboots and integrating the language into our activities. I love this picture of Paul Marks. He's really hard at work, huh? Playing card games. Can you tell we're having fun? So we used language the entire time out in Glacier Bay. I think it was a really successful camp. Kook. These are just some more pictures about how much fun we're having. You know, you can do silly things. All you got to do is get up there and say, you know, in Tlingit, hey, put your foot on that guy's leg, or hey, you know, jump up and down 4 times and spin around. And I mean, it's really an amazing activity. Singing and dancing. We founded our dance group. Nakitlan is our leader over there at this first immersion camp, or second immersion camp, I guess, in Glacier Bay. Gook. I'm including a lot of pictures because of the cultural activities, because it's true that the Tlingit language cannot be taught without the culture. Without the culture, the language is empty. And Jessica made a point to me earlier that without the language, the culture is empty. So, you know, it goes back and forth. You have to have both. Okay, the funding ended, but the fun did not, right? We all evolved and are active in various institutions and community activities. We attend conferences like such. We compete in local and statewide oratory contests, organize and conduct our own immersion camps, organize dance groups, hold various teaching positions, and teach our children, nieces, and nephews. And Jessica's daughter, Shuk, is one of our little, guinea pigs is what I wrote, but she's really learning. She's one of the first children to be born into our generation, and it's just really been a fun process for us. So we have involvement in the schools. I'm not going to read it all off, but here's a list of all of us who are young people teaching in the schools. We have different certifications. Nakitlan now has a master's degree and teaches in the Glacier Valley Elementary School. So you can see that there are opportunities, you know, with learning the language, that you can make a career out of it and live the life that, you know, you dream of and you didn't think there was a lot of opportunities with. We have oratory contests. So we have this one every year, and then we send the first place winners to states. We usually have 4 winners go, because there's 4 categories, go up to Anchorage. And this year, 2 of Jessica's high school students are going to be participating in the statewide competition. Woo! So this has been a wonderful opportunity for us to learn protocol and public speaking skills. Immersion Camp 2006, with no funding from Sealaska or the university. Nakitlan, Hans Chester pulled together some funds from our dance group, and we all pulled together other funds and food and art projects, and we spent 3 or 4 days out at Saga Camp, just on our own time, you know, just because that's what we need to do. We can't be depending on the institutions to support us all the time. So, yeah, we had past campers, you know, from Canada and all over Alaska. Say Diaz smiling. So I guess in conclusion, I just want to say that, you know, there's a trail that was blazed ahead of us by our ancestors, and this trail is now being paved into a path, okay? So this path, our children are going to be able to walk on this path that we are paving. And Seklut discussed earlier that, you know, Tlingit people have had tough times, and we've prevailed. We're still here. And I have to say that, you know, the Tsimshian, they said last night with their song, that warrior song, you know, we're laughing because we're still here. We're still here, and we are together, and we are going to fight, and we are going to keep our languages and our cultures alive. Seklut, Hagu. I have a list of people, and I forgot a couple, and I added them onto another list. But these are all people, and I want Jessica up here because she's a Raven. She's my other half, and we are going to create balance here by saying Gunalchish to our teachers, Kakaslat, who's not here. Her sister, Kehune Dastaya. There's 2 Dastayas here, one from Yakutat and one from Sitka, Gunalchish. Seidia from the interior, Gunalchish Nakashan, Jessica's brother, my uncle, Gunalchish Huaynak, Kushek, who's out there working, Kingiste, Gunalchish, Yachlat, Kinkaudinik, Paul Marks, Anyanach, Ray Wilson, Gach Klein, Gunalchish, Kaseich, who's Humpty, and her cousin Anyach Sachich Dumpty. Clay Kwasi from Yakdot, Auntie Lori, Kais Tan, Shak Sani Keek, Kanak, and our professor Daniel Monteith, who has arrived and will be presenting on Saturday. I have to say thank you to Dan Monteith, because if it wasn't for him being my professor, I probably wouldn't be too good at standing up in front of crowds presenting with a PowerPoint presentation. So, Glchish, Huchawa. And please forgive me if we forgot anybody.
Gunalchish, Dalchini. How, oh. Yelk.
Ade Khatnayu Yech Yukhatu Asak Tlingit Enach Vivian Mork Yukhatu Asak Drakak Enach Yech nach Hatsati Tukdain Tana Yachat Takeaway Yeti Hatsati Kagwantan Dachana Yachat Ka Sammi Ayachat, Ka Irish Ayachat, Ka Norwegian Yeti Ayachat, Ka Heinz 57 Ayachat, Tuk Hitdach, Kachkanaak Kudzitik Hunakawudach. So my presentation is very, very, very last minute. It was actually made this morning. And what I wanted to make sure was that people here got to go away with something physical, but I only have 18 copies on what I'm going to present, if it will come up. Oh, should I translate? Anyway. Just, can you click on index?
Is it Indigenous? Is that what it would be?
Yes. You have to click on the file that says index if you go up. If you can just click on the whole index. Nope. You gotta click, it's the index. Whatever opens the entire CD. Maybe down one. Goodness, sheesh. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that some people got to go away with things. I know that there's a large group that came from Wrangell and a large group that came from the inland people, and I wanted to make sure that you could go home with something. In the process of what we've all been doing, it's funny because sometimes when you're working in language revitalization or anything with the culture, sometimes when we're out back home, we end up feeling alone with a lot of things we do. And it's funny because none of us are alone, and we all the information that we've gotten from so many people. I mean, you heard the list. It's a huge list, and we all work together so hard on all these things. I mean, it's funny because sometimes a lot of us, you know, we all have our culture is complicated. You know, you can hear it in the introductions. And we have figured out that no matter what, we're going to know each other for the rest of our lives. And anyway, so in this process, we've all feel like sometimes we're reinventing the wheel on things. And throughout this search, we find that the more we find about other people, the more we find out about ourselves. And not just in the Tlingit culture, the more we find out from other indigenous groups, because as Alice was showing earlier, there's tons and tons of languages that are becoming extinct across the world. So there are a lot of people around the world who are doing other revitalization efforts. And for a lot of people, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel because people are doing things all over the world. And that led me to start looking at the Maori culture. Because, well, the Yupik people learn from the Hawaiian people, and the Hawaiian people learn from the Maori people, and the Maori people learn from the Welsh people, and so I decided it was warmer in New Zealand. So I went to the World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education, and that was a life-changing event for me, and I encourage everyone to go to it in 2008. It's in Australia, and it's going to be a pretty big deal. But one of the things that I found is, as Indigenous people around the world, we have the same stories. We have the same histories. We have the same stories of assimilation and colonization, and then the same stories of oppression, and the same stories of fighting back from these things. And it's amazing how alike we are, even though we all feel that we're all so different. And so one of the things I wanted to do was give a collection of websites and resources and things that I found along the way that were really helpful. If you could click on the language revitalization. Hopefully this works. This is kind of randomly put together and fairly quickly put together, but on it was just a bunch of language revitalization tips that I found people repeating no matter what culture we were in. Was that we all have to come together under the same vision, and with that same vision, we have to start inspiring other people because we can't do it alone. We have to be together. We have to be a little more organized. And one thing I found was that our language, it really does have the right to exist everywhere there's English. So we have to put it everywhere. We have to see it. We have to hear it. We have to feel it. We have to think it. We have to talk it. And so when you know how to say things like "gunaschish," you don't have to say thank you anymore. Especially here, this is Tlingit territory. Everyone's going to know what you're saying, and if they don't, it's a moment to teach someone what it means. And in this room with all these people, if everyone here were to give up saying thank you and just say "gunaschish," imagine what kind of little movement that could make, you know? And anyway, and the other thing that I stress about is the implementation of technology in language revitalization, because I taught at Zentakahini Middle School in Juneau for 3 years, and the biggest thing that children like is technology. Nowadays, if it's not on an iPod or on the computer or in video games or things like that, we're going to lose their attention really quickly. And it's a little scary because some of our indigenous ideas and more modern ideas or I guess Western civilization ideas, they don't always seem to connect. But where there are differences, you can often find bridges and connect these things. And so, for instance, I would bring in my video games and I would teach people Tlingit playing PlayStations on the PlayStation. And nowadays, lots of little kids have PlayStations. It's fun. And I get to play on video games because I like to do that. And the children think I'm cool. That helps teaching. And but the biggest thing I found is that a lot of times when we're doing these things, we run out of energy. We run out of energy really quick. But the little ones, they got a lot more energy than we do, and we can't harness it, but we can direct them. And we can create little teachers out of them. And so I started teaching. They were talking about TPR, and I don't know if some of you may not know what TPR is, but it's called Total Physical Response. And it was supposed to be this style of teaching that was invented recently. But the funny thing is that it wasn't just invented recently. Moms have been doing that to children since human beings learned how to talk. And so it's pick up your shoes, make your bed, do the dishes, and it's just telling children what to do 24/7, and which works really well in a classroom. And so I started to teach the other children how to do TPR, and the next thing you know, these little children are starting to tell each other what to do in Tlingit, and they sure like to tell each other what to do. So it works out really well, and it was really neat to see your PowerPoint and see some of my students. They're now going on into high school and continuing to take the classes as well, and those kids there's more and more and more of these kids coming up, and sometimes, we feel like things are lost and things are going away, but there's been a movement starting, and it started, back in the 60s, I think, There's been a lot of people who've been involved for years and years and years doing all of these things, but we often don't know about each other. And it's moments like these when we get together and we get to talk and we get to find out who we are and connect. And so that's why I made this. Anyway, if you could go back. But the one in blue, speak your language. That's the best way to save it. Speak it. Everywhere you can, speak it. In the grocery store, on the street, the more people hear it, the more people say it, the less people are going to be afraid to make all the funky sounds that we have. People will become less embarrassed. There's a lot of things. There's multi-generational effects of trauma that have happened to people through the boarding schools. People who've been afraid to speak because of the things that they've experienced. And by speaking it and by getting it out there, we help our elders become more comfortable with it when they hear the young people speaking it more. And the young people, when they hear other young people or a little bit older people speaking it, then it inspires them as well. If you were to click on the immersion schools link, I decided to put a bunch of the immersion schools links on here because it's very important for us to learn about each other from around the world, to know that we're not the only ones who are experiencing this. And so there's some links for the Yupik Immersion School, a Cree Immersion School. One of my favorites, of course, is the Hawaiian Immersion School. I think we should just continue to do cultural trades with people in warm climates. And there's the Kamehameha schools down there. They have a really cool distance learning program where you can get on there and learn Hawaiian and listen to videos and everything. Ka Hawaiian Dachana Yachatsu. Anyway, so maybe sometime I'll go visit my relatives over there in Molokai. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that these links were on here so that we can look at them, and we can pretty much, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, we just have to do what they're doing. Because what the Maori people are doing is working, what the Hawaiian people are doing is working, what the Yupik people are doing is working. I think Gach Klein here mentioned that he went to the Yupik school, and they only speak 2 hours of English there. I think in the Maori immersion school, Spanish is their first, or Maori is their first language, Spanish is their second, and then English is their third. And that was just because the guy who set up the computer program spoke Spanish. They decided they liked it and it was close to English, so they went with it. But anyway, if you could go back again. Of course, their languages are a lot easier than Tlingit. On the language resources, I wanted to put a bunch of things to various articles that I felt were important, like Running the Indigenous Language Gauntlet was written by an Arapaho man who had, they had language classes in every single grade level, I believe in their whole school. They had all these language classes available, but yet they were still learning their language, or losing their language, and they didn't understand why that was happening. Well, what happened was it became a classroom language. It didn't get out into the community, and so they were still losing it because English was still predominantly spoken in the community in the homes. And so what they did was they got a grant and they translated Bambi into Arapaho. And what Bambi did was they brought Bambi into the home, and little kids with videos, they want to watch it again and again and again and again and again. And pretty soon you got, the Little Mermaid songs running through your head so many times you don't want to hear it anymore. But so they put Bambi in, and so, pretty soon the parents are learning Arapaho whether they wanted to or not. And, it brought the language into the home, and it made it alive for them, and it interested the children. And that, ties in the whole family. And then there's some other links on here, of course, for Alas School, the Indigenous Language Institute. There's a World Indigenous Property World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, which there will be a presentation by my mom on Sunday, and Marie Olson on the cultural and intellectual property rights, which of course is very important to know in language revitalization projects. Anyways, there's another really cool link on here also, it's called a phraselator. And I got to see the phraselator at the National Indian Education Conference up in Anchorage and also in New Zealand. And it was invented by the military, and one of these costs about $5,000. But any grant writers in here? Anyway, we all need phraselators. You can actually put 30,000 phrases onto it, and any language can utilize this. So you program it with your 30,000 phrases with whatever language you're translating into, and it will go back and forth between the languages. It's a really cool toy. Although I only interacted with it in Blackfeet, I think. Anyway, and I believe it's slightly waterproof. Although they don't recommend submerging it, although they did accidentally submerge it once and it still did work, but they don't recommend doing it more than once. But yeah, it's a pretty neat tool. It looks all sci-fi and everything. I'm a big sci-fi geek, so I liked it. Anyways, if you could go back again, I will try to get through it a little bit faster. There's also a link for websites, or lots of links for websites that are available, because people are doing things. So there's Alaskool, there's the Alaska Native Knowledge Network. See Alaska, of course, has all their language resources put out. And one thing that I utilized in my classroom under See Alaska's website was their virtual reality games. And those kids, they play them until they're sick of them. And when they're sick of them, you know that they actually know it because they don't want to play it anymore. They're like, oh, I already know this. That's a good thing because they already know it. And anyway, those video games, they're really fun to play too. And I do it still, just to catch up, because I've been spending some time in Anchorage, so I got some Anchorage dialect or something in there. Anyway, it's a good tool to utilize. And where is it? There's the clinkitculture.com, and where's the... Anyways, See Alaska Heritage, Alaskool, clinkitlanguage.org. Oh yeah, there's one where you can play Tlingit Hangman, and there's various, I don't know if it's kind of like memory, sort of. Anyway, if you could go back again. Yeah, sure. Click on that. So on there, there's the links for the Tlingit Noun Dictionary, various Alaska Native issues, and then the standards for, a lot of people sometimes aren't aware that there's actual standards out there for culturally responsive schools, culturally responsive communities, culturally responsive parents, culturally responsive teachers, and those are all really good resources to use, whether you're a teacher, whether you're participating in the education program, or just within communities. If you could go back again. Or maybe not. Anyway, there are other links on there too for books and things, one of which was mentioned by Ganeoti, the Leanne Hinton books, as well as TPR books. Anyways, I have 18 of these discs ready to pass out. Although it was all done very, very quickly this morning, I only have a few, so I would like hopefully people who in different communities, possibly you can just take them home and you're allowed to copy them. This isn't my information. This doesn't belong to me. It's out there on the internet. It's free for everyone. I just kind of organized some of the things through different research that I've done. And so I want to make sure some inland Tlingit people, some Wrangell people, and I see some other people already raising their hands for this, just to make sure that everybody knows as well that it has to be put into a computer that has internet access, because it's just internet links, so you got to be up and ready for that. And hopefully by the next clan conference it will actually be more organized and more information, and anyway, that's what I have for you all. So gunashish.
Yes.
Hedla we yelk konachawtlak yuk aywatan hetlek awul khis idut so ye jennat atstujes konach eten yuk aywatan. My name is Vida Davis. I'm Inupiaq. I was raised by a Tlingit couple here in Sitka in 1947. Her name was Mary Marshall. Her Tlingit name was Kaitan Takdain Tan. And the man that was her husband was Eddie Marshall, Kagwan Tan. His Tlingit name was Kaichish. And my mentor was Mary Marshall, because from the time I got up in the morning until I went to bed, sometimes my dad got a hold of me before I went to bed, because he believed that I should learn English as well as Tlingit. I was Mama's little girl from morning till night. I know some of you know that when Mom talks to you, you look to see how she looks in the morning when you first get up. If she's happy, we're going to have a good day, right? And if she doesn't have a smile on her face, we know we're in for trouble, because there's something troubling her, right? So I used to sneak down the stairs and peek around the doorway to make sure, to see if she had a happy face, a somber face, or maybe sometimes an angry face. But very seldom she had an angry face. And it was from her that I learned the language from, because it was 24/7 in the house in the daytime that she spoke Tlingit, and I was only 4. And pretty soon, the first phrase that I uttered to her, and she was so amazed, she made me repeat it for my adopted dad when he came from work. The first phrase that I ever said to her was, "Ati, gandechatuati." So she was so surprised. She said, "Could you repeat to Daddy what you said?" So I repeated it. And from there, I've been speaking that ever since. I really admire these young ladies that came up before me. They are very, very, very knowledgeable, and I'm so proud that they took it upon themselves to do what they are doing. I want you guys to give these young ladies a big hand again. I was telling Jenney, I'm sure glad you guys all said it all for me, because I'll just speak very shortly. But before I conclude this, there's a woman that I met this morning, and she told me that I might have a relative in Metlaka. Since we left our home, which is Pilot Point, Alaska, and when people found out who I was, my maiden name was Spoon. I've been slowly finding relatives, and it's just so awesome, because I came from an era when your dad died. Well, the system took you away, even though our relatives wanted to take care of us. They uprooted us. We went from orphanage to orphanage for 2 years. Then I was in Wrangell, and from there I came here, and this became my permanent home. So I really am proud and humble to be taken into the Takdain Tan clan. My clan mother is sitting over there, Lillian Hillman, and I'm really proud of what your aunt taught me. So it's my goal. She made me promise when I was younger that whatever I teach you, share it, and it's not always about money. She used to tell me, if you have something to share, share it. So I try to do that, but I'm a low-profile person. I'd rather sit in a corner in the dark. I don't want anybody to know about me, because I'm so humble. And I'm very thankful that you guys take me as I am, because I am very stingy with my proximity. I'm very, very private. And so I was telling Yeshk a little while ago, I said, this is my first presentation in 30 years, and I'm very nervous, but I guess I'm not, because I'm rolling. Well, anyway, what I wanted to tell you guys is Alice Dundas. I don't know if she's still here, and I know that this little boy is a relative of Yeshk. My co-worker, Ann Johnson, I want to acknowledge her. She's our Ellis teacher down at SNEP. This is Ann Johnson, Coach Tla. And my other mentor I always had to do what she told me because I'm younger than her. We're both clan sisters. Das dia. She was our elder before she retired, and one time her and I got into trouble because we misinterpreted my name. Oh boy, did my clan mother give me not a clan mother, clan sister, give me a chewing out. She says, I'm going to tell it to you, and I'm not going to tell it to you again. The next time I ask you, you better tell me what it's from. So I learned. You always have to be careful, because if something sounds like the way you think it should be said, it's not often the case. It came from something to that clan or that person's particular life. And I'm getting around to this little boy. One day he came to school and he says, I've been gone a very long time. Well, 1 week is a long time to him. My mother said I've been sick and I couldn't come. I said, oh, gee, what was your problem? She told me I had ammonia. I said, ammonia? That must be pretty bad. Yeah, she said it was, and she told me I cannot sit next to any children. And Ye's little cousin, whose name is Michelle, she says, oh, you can sit by me. My mom says I catch everything. And so I enjoy teaching the little kids. I think they're the best ones. But I also find the high school a challenge, and that's I love my students, and this is going to be my last year. I always say, I've been saying this for 4 years because of my arthritis, but I think, Herman, this is my last year. I always promise him I'm going to quit. This is going to be my last year. But you know what? September comes around, they're calling me. The kids are saying, how go? So I always go. And I like to touch upon your elders. They're your best resources. You got to talk to them before they're gone. Because after they're gone, are you going to go up to the... Charlie Joseph used to love to tell this. When they're gone, are you going to go up to the grave and say, what was it, Grandma, that you were talking about? What was it, Grandpa, that you were talking about? You got to do it now, because there's very few. And I think some parents need to be involved too. Now, I don't mean to talk bad or anything, but this is the truth here, where we teach the child, they bring him to the door and they make a fast exit out the door. But we do have some good grandparents and parents that do come and observe us. And one of them is sitting over there. I like to, guys, for you to see one of these wonderful grandparents. We even call him Grandpa. His name is Spike Arnold. Could you stand up, Spike? He's learning right along with his two grandsons, and it just makes us so proud. And I've reverted to the white man's way. I got to depend on notes. Lately, I fell in love with a computer, and that's what I go to. By the way, I love to play GameCube. And respect goes a long way. You got to respect yourself first before you can start respecting people. But you have to listen to what your elders tell you. Don't try to change things on your own, because what they're telling you is, of course, what they experienced and what they went through. It's them that you have to pay attention to, not do your own thing, make your own rules. You have to do what your elders taught you and what they tell you to do. They are the authority. And in conferences like these, it should be the elders that be sitting up these tables with the younger sponsors, like these young ladies that are sitting there, because they are still more valuable, I think, to such a thing as this. You need to have them interact with everything that you put on, because without them, you're going to be nothing.
Good night, Sheesh. I hope that we will be forgiven for talking so long. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to say? I have plenty, but I can't. You'll notice that all of our world's leading experts were Tlingit, it wasn't intentional that this was the case. It just happened this way. But tomorrow afternoon, 3:30 to 5, there's Tsimshian and Haida, and there'll be Tsimshian talk about language work specifically, and there'll be some Haida also. So please attend that if you're interested. And John has a few words.
I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity just for about 5 minutes to talk to you about an exciting new program.
Self-introduction.
Okay, I'm John Pugh, the Chancellor of the University of Alaska. My heritage is Welsh and French. And I have been in Alaska for 30 plus years and have been in Juneau for 28 of those years. So it's great to have you here and to have you invite me here. I want to thank all the presenters, particularly Paul and Vida. I really appreciate that you are up here, as you mentioned, Vida. That's very important to be here. And I also want to thank Marcia and Mary and Jessica and Vivian, all who have been students who have come through the university at some point in time and have been part of the program at the University of Alaska Southeast. And that's the reason I'm here today, to talk about those programs. Almost all of them have mentioned the language program. There's been mention of the oratory program. Since this was not a program on the arts, we didn't talk about that, but that was in another room talking about Native arts. And the University of Alaska Southeast, and I want to pass these out and hope everybody will take one with them, has 3 funds that are related to the preservation of the culture or restoration, revitalization of the culture and language. One of those funds that is brand new that we want to particularly highlight today is the Emma Marks Memorial for Alaska Native Languages that has just been set up. And that fund is one that we want to grow to be able to provide materials and program development in the languages and for particularly Southeast languages here throughout the area in Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian. So this is something that I wanted you to know about, and we will get these out to you, distributed to you. The other thing is the Native Oratory Support. We actually have a fund in order to support Native Oratory, which our students do compete in every single year. And we just had our contest a few weeks ago, and 4 of our students are going up to Anchorage to compete in the contest up in Anchorage, which is a statewide contest, and they compete in Native languages and declaration, or what you might call the old oratory, the Native oratory that many of you as elders participated in your various families and your communities. And also they participate in various other areas. One is storytelling, and it's an excellent contest. And so that fund is one that people have been giving to, and we're trying to work through, the Native Oratory Fund. Finally, the oldest fund that we've had is one that's been at the University of Alaska Southeast for over 15 years, and that's the Selina Peratrovich Memorial Scholarship for Native Arts, which was established when we first started developing the Northwest Coast Arts program at the University of Alaska Southeast. And that fund has been developing for a number of years, but it continues and provides scholarships for individuals who want to continue to learn and to carry forward the Native arts. So those are the 3 funds, and I would encourage you to take an opportunity to look at these brochures. As soon as I stop, I'll help hand them out. Maybe some others can help us hand them out so everybody can get those. And we have the University of Alaska Southeast is sponsoring a reception, which is right down the hall to the left out the doors. And I will be over there, and others if you want to talk about those funds in a minute. So there's food over there and something to drink. And so right out the doors and to the left. Thank you again very much. Gunachis.
Gunachis, how Pagasa kung dogatin.